This war has to end. And to underscore our commitment, we are ending all American support for offensive operations in the war in Yemen, including relevant arms sales.
U.S. President Joe Biden charts a new course in an effort to end the war in Yemen. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. It's the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with more than 24 million people, some 80% of the population, in need of assistance. To date, over 100,000 have died. Yemen's civil war began in 2014 when Houthi insurgents with links to Iran took control of the country's capital and largest city, Sana'a. They captured the presidential palace in January of 2015. Fast forward to the intervention of regional powers, including Iran and Gulf states led by Saudi Arabia, creating a broader proxy war for control of the country, with the United States supporting the Saudis. Joining us now from New York is the former Foreign Minister of Yemen, Khaled Al-Yamani. Ambassador, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So the new U.S. administration has announced that it will cease support for what it calls offensive actions by its allies in Yemen. But President Biden also said that he recognizes that Saudi Arabia faces threats from Iran. Here's part of what the president had to say. Let's listen.
This war has to end. And to underscore our commitment, we are ending all American support for offensive operations in the war in Yemen, including relevant arms sales. At the same time, Saudi Arabia faces missile attacks, UAV strikes, and other threats from Iranian-supplied forces in multiple countries. We're going to continue to support and help Saudi Arabia defend its sovereignty and its territorial integrity and its people.
So, Ambassador, how do you think this change in U.S. policy will impact the war on the ground and efforts to deal with the humanitarian crisis?
It looks from the components of this mandate that is contradicting. You see that from one side it's stopping asking the Saudis to stop the war and stopping also all the logistics to the Saudi coalition, and at the same time, stating that they will continue defending the Saudis from any attack from the Iranian proxies in the region. So this is the way we see it, and it's not that easy. There is a huge gap between the good intentions of President Biden in ending the war in Yemen and the implementation on the ground. If you, for example, see that there is a lot of challenges facing this implementation, given the administration, the new envoy maybe can get some leverage on the international and regional dimension of this crisis. But we in Yemen, we are afraid that Yemen will be left alone into a low intensity conflict. And we ask the administration to be more engaging in ending this war and reaching a durable settlement of the crisis in Yemen.
When you say that you hope the new U.S. envoy to Yemen, that's Timothy Lenderking, you hope that he will have more leverage. Is that leverage against Saudi Arabia?
No, it's not against. Look, there is three levels of this conflict. There is the international level, there is the regional level, and there is the local level. On the international level, maybe this administration can do something positive with Ambassador Lenderking and the other envoy, Rob Malley, for Iran. They can do something on the regional dimension by bringing Iran to the sort of understanding, and the Saudis to have a regional understanding on Yemen. But then what will happen on the ground in Yemen? Because my feeling and the feeling of all the specialists working on Yemen, that still the parties on the ground believe on the armed solution, believe that the conflict will bring them about a victory or something like that. Nonetheless, after 6 years, they're still fighting. And as an example of that, what we are seeing today, the Houthis are still launching huge operations to capture Marib in the north, which means that there is no intention for peace. The Houthis are reading all these signals coming out of Washington as in support or encouraging them to take over Yemen and by force.
Right, speaking of signals, what kind of a signal do you think the new policy sends to Saudi Arabia and, for that matter, Abu Dhabi?
I mean, you know, it's puzzling. This administration, for example, is talking about removing the Houthis from the FTO list, calling the Houthis to be a responsible partner. But in the country, you see the Houthis are retaliating. Yesterday, they started this major operation in Marib. Also, yesterday, they launched 3 drones against the territory of Saudi Arabia. And they continue. They think that they've been encouraged by the removal from the listing of the Biden administration. And this is really giving them the feeling. You are talking about non-state actor. Really a group that is working with terrorist, methodology to empower itself.
But the United States,
part of your question about the Saudis and the Emiratis, the Saudis and the Emiratis been working for quite some time to end this war, but the problem that there is no real partner. First, the Houthis are expecting instructions from Iran. Let's, for example, test now if we can test the Iranian. Are they going to send signals to the Houthis to stop their operation in Marib in order to engage in political discussion? I don't see that. And I see that Iran is trying to squeeze this administration to get the utmost benefits out of this administration in the New Deal. And I see that it's a challenging because we have 2 envoys. We have one for Yemen and we have one for Iran. They might be working together, but they might be conflicting in their proposals. And that's why I see that there should be a streamlining of policies toward putting more pressure on Iran and more pressure on the Houthis so that they can come to the table of negotiation and we can reach the settlement at the end.
Ambassador, insofar as taking the Houthis off that proscribed list, the United States says it's doing that so that it will enable humanitarian aid to get into the country. And that is a positive development, isn't it?
Yeah. But the signal that sends out is not a positive development. I mean, the way we thought that, yes, the Trump administration made a very unwise move when they put the Houthis in the FTO, and a lot of pressure from the United Nations, the Secretary General, that this will complicate the humanitarian suffering of the Yemeni people, especially that Yemen is now having, within the looming famine conditions, and there is a lot of people are dying. There is small pockets in the country that start to have serious famine issues. But from the other side, it gives the Houthis the impression that they can do whatever. They are free to do whatever in Yemen. There will be no international pressure. They will continue their faithful crusade, if I may say it this way. And that's why we need to read this new administration, Iran rapprochement into a more put it into experience, put it in the testing ground.
There have been several plans to resolve this crisis. There is the UN plan. There was the United States plan, which was formulated under former Secretary of State John Kerry. Well, since that plan, much has changed on the ground. There was also the Sweden plan, if you remember. But it seems that the UN plan is the one that's now being talked about. That's the one being led by the UN Special Envoy Martin Griffiths. He's been holding talks with the Iranians. What does that plan call for?
Okay. Now, I don't believe that this administration, because the mandate of the president in his speech of the 4th of this month was clear, that United States will support and put all its strength behind the UN special envoy. And what we have in this special envoy proposal is very simple, although it looks sometimes complicated, but it's 3 steps: cessation of hostilities and some trust-building measures, just to easing economic and humanitarian delivery and access. And the 3rd one is the final stage of political consultation to reach an agreement. It's been a plan that's been on the table for the last 10 months, and both parties were working in detailed discussion of the proposal. I think the proposal is ready. If the parties are willing to engage, this will be a very important step for Ambassador Tim Linder-King to push. I think also Ambassador Linder-King will have to call for a meeting of the Security Council P5 group to discuss what sort of things we can do in order to bring the parties to the table of negotiation. We need to have Russia on board. We have to need China on board, and with the P3, Russia and United Kingdom, France, and United States. So if they agree on the modus operandi of how to deal with this crisis, how to push the parties into the table of negotiation, then we will see some results.
Ambassador Khaled Al-Yamani, thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's get to our panel right now. Joining us from New York is Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the United Nations, Abdallah Al-Mouallimi. Alexander Azadgan is a geopolitical analyst and an international political economics professor at Saddleback College. And Gerald Firestein served as the U.S. ambassador to Yemen during the Obama administration. He currently is the senior vice president of the Middle East Institute. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Ambassador Firestein, let me start with you. As we heard there from the former Yemen foreign minister, there appears to be some confusion. He said he was puzzled by the Biden announcement. On the one hand, President Biden says the U.S. will stop all offensive support for its allies in the war, but will continue to help Saudi Arabia defend its sovereignty. Even the Houthis appear a little bit confused by this. We heard from one Houthi official. This is what he had to say. Let's listen to it.
The declaration was good in the beginning, but not at the end, because it said that the U.S. will stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia, but it will continue to provide protection from our missiles. We and our missiles will not stop until a ceasefire is announced by the American, Zionist, Saudi, and Emirati enemies. They are the ones who started the war, and they should put an end to it.
So, Ambassador Firestein, what is your reading of U.S. intentions here?
Well, I think that that clearly what President Biden was trying to establish was that the United States was going to put its full effort behind finding a diplomatic resolution to this conflict. That's why he appointed Tim Linder-King as a special envoy. The intention of declaring that we are no longer going to support Saudi offensive operations inside of Yemen was intended, hopefully, to help empower the special envoy, Tim Linder-King, along with Martin Griffiths, the UN special envoy, to bring the parties back to the negotiating table to complete, as the former Foreign Secretary Al-Yamani said, to complete the joint declaration that Martin Griffiths has been working on, and to establish a true ceasefire. A ceasefire that only is compelling to the Saudis is not a ceasefire at all. And one thing that the administration needs to be careful about is not inadvertently tipping the balance of the conflict in order to allow the Houthis to win the military victory that they haven't been able to achieve so far.
But Ambassador Firestein, isn't it a little bit confusing when the president says we will halt all what he said was relevant arms sales in support of this, but at the same time he said we will maintain Saudi Arabia's security? I mean, do we know what that means?
Well, fundamentally what it means is that we're probably going to stop providing the Saudis with weapons and munitions that are used primarily in their air campaign inside of Yemen. So we're talking about precision-guided munitions and other specific kinds of equipment. But the U.S. guarantee of security for Saudi Arabia's borders and for its efforts to defeat Houthi missile and drone attacks inside of Saudi Arabia is unchanged. There's no real confusion there.
All right, let me bring in Ambassador Al-Mouallimi. He is the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador Al-Mouallimi, what is the Saudi response to what President Biden had to say?
Oh, we welcome the statement by President Biden. It signifies reiterated commitment to the safety and security of Saudi Arabia. It talked about intensifying the diplomatic efforts, appointing a special envoy, and it talked about a more active involvement of the U.S. administration in trying to find a peaceful solution to the crisis in Yemen, and we welcome all of that.
What about the lifting of the designation of the Houthis as a terrorist organization?
Well, we take that as a technical matter. The Houthis are a terrorist organization. They have been declared so, and that declaration still stands in principle. Now, there are technical difficulties with the declaration with regard to the ability of the humanitarian organizations to operate in areas controlled by the Houthis and the ability of independent operators to do the same. And to that extent, the lifting of the designation, we see it as a temporary measure to help alleviate these restrictions so that the humanitarian effort is not impeded.
And Ambassador Al-Mouallimi, are the Saudi Arabian authorities absolutely clear on the kinds of weapons that the United States will stop selling it?
I can't answer that question quite frankly, because I am not privy to that information. But whatever it is, the crisis in Yemen is not short of weapons and ammunition. It is short of innovative diplomatic solutions, and it is short of the willingness of the international community to put pressure on the Houthis and their backers to make sure that they come to the negotiating table in good faith and try to reach a settlement. That is what the crisis is in need of, and we hope that's what the Biden administration will provide.
All right, Alexander, the UN Special Envoy Martin Griffiths, he's been talking to the Iranians. How important is Iran's role in resolving this crisis, and what is expected of the Iranians?
It's good to be with you, Anna, and thanks for your invitation. I think this is a great opportunity for regional players, Saudi Arabia and Iran, to come together to some kind of a resolution, to some kind of an understanding, diplomatic and otherwise. We have to look at what's happening in Yemen today, and like you said, the presence of the UN envoy to Iran in the greater picture, especially the upcoming, I don't want to call it negotiations, but talks that will be taking between Iran and P5+1, going the Biden administration coming back into the negotiation table. I think President Biden's announcement that they may withdraw, like you said, relevant support from Saudi Arabia is a signal to Iran that there could be broader amplifications from this conflict. Most people don't understand the geographical significance of this country. By the way, the poorest Arab country getting pounded by the richest Arab country, Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, and UAE and the GCC partners. From east to west, we have the Strait of Malacca, we have the Strait of Hormuz, we have the Bab al-Mandab, which is extremely crucial here, and that's what I like to focus on. On the other side of the strait, you have Djibouti with Chinese forces there. So this is strategic to everybody. And I think the Iranians could play a positive role here in order to build good faith measures and with the Americans.
Yeah, very quickly, Alexander, but as you say, the Iranians can play a positive role here, but what would they be looking for from the United States? Would there be some kind of quid pro quo here?
Well, one of the things that has been talked about or has been brought up a lot, and you wanted me to talk very shortly, so I'll have to be very brief here, is the fact that under the JCPOA, the Biden administration assumes or thinks or projects or wants to bring in all these other regional issues on the table, not just a nuclear issue.
Right.
They want to clarify Iran's role in the broader Middle East. So in that sense, this could be an item, but I don't see much openness from the Iranians, especially because in about four to 5 months, they're going to have their presidential elections.
Yeah.
And most likely from what we're seeing and what we're forecasting, it's going to be a conservative and it's going to be somebody with a military background. So they're going to double down, in my opinion, the Iranians.
Right. Ambassador Feinstein, the United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken, during his confirmation hearings in the United States Senate, he talked about this issue, the Yemen civil war. He talked about the Houthis. This is what he had to say. Let's listen.
About the Houthis, they overthrew a government in Yemen. They engaged in a path of aggression through the country. They directed aggression toward Saudi Arabia. They've committed atrocities and human rights abuses. And that is a fact. What's also a fact, though, is that the Saudi-led campaign in Yemen to push back against the Houthi aggression has contributed to what is, by most accounts, the worst humanitarian situation that we face anywhere in the world.
So as we can hear there, Ambassador Feinstein, the man who is now the Secretary of State of the United States wasn't very complimentary about the Houthis, but that view seems to have changed. What made the United States change?
No, I don't think it's changed. I think that the United States and the Biden administration have a very clear-eyed perspective on exactly who the Houthis are and what the Houthis represent. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, as Tony Blinken said quite correctly, we are in this situation today because of Houthi aggression, because of a Houthi coup d'etat against the legitimate government of Yemen, and because the Houthis prevented the completion of a political transition plan that all of the Yemenis joined in supporting in 2011, 2012. So there's no misunderstanding about the nature of the Houthis or what they represent inside of Yemen. But there is also a reality that understands that in order to achieve a political resolution, there has to be some engagement with the Houthis. You have to talk to the Houthis, even though you don't like them, even though you don't trust them. But at the end of the day, there's not going to be peace in Yemen unless and until the Houthis agree to sit down at the table with the government and with the rest of the Yemeni community and achieve a sustainable, dependable agreement on the way forward.
Ambassador Al-Mouallimi, how would Saudi Arabia like to see this war end, and what else would Saudi Arabia like to see on the table? You know, as Alexander Azadgan just told us a moment ago, the United States is looking at a little bit more than just resolving the civil war in Yemen. It's looking at a comprehensive solution to some of the other issues in the region as well.
Before addressing your question, let me comment on something that Professor Alexander said. He said the poorest country is being bombed by the richest country in the Arab world. This may sound like a good soundbite, but it's far from the truth. We are not at war with Yemen. We are not at war with the Yemeni people. We are responding to a challenge by a rebel organization backed up by Iran, which is a minority organization representing a minority of the population of Yemen, and who has taken over illegitimately the reins of power in Yemen. So the description that was provided by the professor, I think, is somewhat misleading, with all due respect. As to what does Saudi Arabia want in Yemen, we simply want peace and security in Yemen. We want the restoration of legitimacy. We do not want on our southern border to have another Hezbollah, an organization that is militarily armed and that is outside the control of the government and that receives instructions from Tehran or from Qum. That is what we cannot allow and do not want, and we want the Yemeni people to decide for themselves what type of government they want. We don't want that to be imposed on them by the Ayatollahs or by the religious fanatics that come out every day in Yemen and say death to America, death to Israel, death to this, death to that. That is what we want. We want an end to the war peacefully on a negotiated basis, between all parties, including the Houthis, as representing whoever they represent.
All right, let me get a response from Alexander. Alexander, the ambassador says that your characterization of this conflict as the region's richest country bombing its poorest country is not quite correct.
Well, I disagree with the ambassador. I think when you have around 130,000 people, from the latest estimates that I read, killed, and around 13 to 17,000 of them are children and civilians, it is the richest Arab country, inflicting a lot of damage on one of the poorest Arab countries. The ambassador would like to emphasize that they're fighting the Houthis, that the Houthis are a rebel, and the government that they were trying to overthrow was the legitimate government. But you take a look at the Arab world, every 20 years you have a legitimate government being thrown out of office by some other movement, whether it's legitimate or not. So this is just the reality. And everybody lined up for the past 6 years or so, 7 years almost, to sell all sorts of weapons to the Saudis to be used against whoever, whether it's the Houthi rebels who like to refer to themselves as Ansarullah or what. But I do agree that, unfortunately, what we have seen in the region is proxy wars left and right. Iran and Saudi Arabia are fighting their wars in Yemen. Iran and Saudi Arabia have tried to fight their wars in Syria and in Iraq, and the people who suffer are the indigenous, the civilians there. I think the ambassador himself had a lot of sound bites and stereotypically, trying to be negative toward Iran. I think these two countries need to sit down together. The Iranian Foreign Minister, Dr. Zarif, has said time and time again that Iran is under no illusion that Saudi Arabia should not play a constructive role or a leadership role in this area. The problem is that Saudi Arabia wants to have its vassal states and sphere of influence, and when it comes to Iran wanting to exert the same power, suddenly you have double standards.
Okay, Ambassador Feinstein.
The last time I checked, Iran was not a member of the League of Arab States, was not a member of the Gulf Cooperation Council. Iran has no right to interfere in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, or Yemen, or anywhere else in the Arab world, for that matter. It's none of their business.
Neither does Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Neither is it Saudi Arabia's business, sir, to interfere everywhere.
Is misleading.
Okay. I'm afraid we have run out of time. We are going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.